Welcome back, Taking Chances viewers and listeners. This is the Taking Chances podcast. It's your host, Justin,
And Burnett.
And Q.
and we're giving you a brand new episode chock full of great topics, guys. So, in this installment, I wanted to talk about our representation with the media because I kind of feel like nowadays, news lately is pretty all over the place. There's always talk about COVID, there's talk about the possible invasion of Ukraine, all these different things coming up within media outlets. But one thing that I really find interesting is there was a recent case within my hometown of Bridgeport, Connecticut, about a woman named Lauren Smith Fields. They found her dead in her apartment day after a Tinder date. Her case wasn't represented and handled with the proper just due. But what I found the most alarming about it is when media outlets were reporting the story, I found that the way that they projected Lauren's image to the public kind of was just, it didn't do her justice. Here's this, they posted a picture of the guy she went on a date with in a wholesome manner, but with Lauren's photo was her in a bikini, and this is on the New York Times. So, the image of a black woman who was slain is then now being changed and misappropriated into this image that I feel like it's media pushed out to the media. So I kind of wanted to use this episode to kind of talk about our representation within the media and just kind of hash it out from things that we've seen in our backgrounds. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
It's honestly disturbing that this is something we continue to have to deal with. Being in 2022 now, it's like, okay, we haven't figured this out yet, people. Like, why is it that we continue to be portrayed in a different light? Why is it that when it comes to black faces, brown faces, the rhetoric or even just the terms used, or just like you said, even when it comes to photos, just the overall portrayal, it's always different. It's always like we're put into this narrative that, okay, we can only be that. And for example, one of the things that Quentin knows kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So the late Chesley Christ, or sorry, is it Chesley Chris? I think her last name is pronounced Chris.
I think it's Chris.
So she was found dead in Midtown. It was alleged to be suicide, and there was a note found next to her, basically giving all of her her properties to her mother. And so when Quentin brought it to my attention, the news that what the tragedy that took place, it was a Shade Room post, and they highlighted that she was Miss USA and was a reporter for, I believe, E! News, or a commentator, and they highlighted all of those things, but failed to highlight that she was a lawyer. That actually was like her first career before she even accomplished Miss USA, before she became a commentator on E! So it was like, for me, this was someone who had inspired me when I was a law student. I followed her, and I was inspired by her. I mean, like, I really used to go on her Instagram and be like, wow, like, she just got admitted to this bar. She just did that. Like, this can be done. This is a Black woman, so I know it can be done. Because me being in law school, it's like, okay, I'm in this state where I'm one of 4 Black students in my law school class. I'm not seeing that representation. I'm not seeing Black women in law or in the legal profession. It's just not as common. So where did I find my inspiration? Instagram. I found her and I followed her, and she was someone who, like I said, I used to just go to her page for motivation. On the days where I was like, I can't do this, or I don't think I can do it, I went to her page for motivation. So her death really it really affected me negatively, and it really was heavy on my heart because, I mean, she was amazing. I don't know her personally, but she was amazing. And so to see that, it really broke my heart. But then to see how it was reported, even on the Shade Room, like, you guys can't get it together. You guys really couldn't get all the facts right. And then, funny enough, Quentin went back to the post. I think it was maybe like 15 to 20 minutes later. He was like, "Oh, wait, no, it says lawyer." And I was like, "Babe, look, if you look closely, they edited the caption. That wasn't the original post. Like I read their posts over and over, and I was like, "Where's the lawyer? Where's the lawyer?" Like, y'all put all these things, and where's the lawyer part? And they edited it, so they did fix it. They did correct it. And I'm not saying like people don't make mistakes and things don't happen, but if you're gonna put out news, like get it right. Like especially when it comes to people's titles, and especially something as commendable as that, as being a lawyer, right? Like she helped a lot of people in prison and helped their civil rights and fought for that. So it's like, don't downplay that. You know, that's my take on it. But it is it's a big issue.
You know, it's interesting you brought up that case because I'm actually familiar with it. I happened to actually see a news reporting on CBS about that. And, you know, I think it's important that we do really talk about the language that's used when talking about Black women and Black men. Like I remember they talked about her being Miss America, her having all these nice qualities, and they were like, "Oh, we would never expect we would do this." She was a happy spirit, but her being a lawyer was the last thing that they mentioned of all the many things. Whereas if it's someone from a different race, people usually mention their professions or their career stats before they talk about them in a personal manner. And I find that for Black people, our representation is always tied to characteristics or accolades, but not necessarily, I don't want to say accolades because being a lawyer is an accolade, but I'm trying to think of a better way to say that it's like we're tied to just the things that we do or the things that are just the things that we're perceived to be. And even in social media, I feel like, now all these people are flocking to social media for their news, for their inspiration and whatnot. But I kind of feel like even the representation from these social media outlets it's getting better, but I kind of feel like they don't fully represent the broad spectrum of Black people.
Yeah, that's true because, like you said, they mentioned that she was a lawyer last, and they mentioned that she was Miss America first, but they did that because it's whatever gets the clicks. Whatever is the attention grabber is what they use. So there's like, oh yeah, Miss America. Everybody would click because that's Miss America. But if they would have just said, oh, Black lawyer committed suicide, it would have been like, oh, another Black person died. It wouldn't have been as breaking news per se if they would have just said, oh, it was just a regular Black lawyer. But they should have did that because that's what she was first. She was a lawyer before she became Miss America. She could have never she could have never said, I wanted to be Miss America. I just want to be a lawyer. Then what?
Right. And it's so funny because in all of these professions, well, particularly even with law, there are a lot of lawyers who deal with substance abuse, who deal with drug abuse, and have a lot of mental health issues just due to the nature of the work that we're dealing with. It's always high pace, a lot of high stakes, depending on what type of law you practice. And if you have clients, I mean, their problems become your problems. And so it's just interesting to think that even if it was, okay, a Black lawyer did so-and-so, it wouldn't have mattered, but it should matter. Like, that should have been enough, right? But, I understand what you're saying, Quentin. Like, it comes back to it's like a clickbait. What is gonna get these people to click on this post? If we put this pretty photo from a model or this, that, like, it looks good, so that's appealing. And I think that's an issue. And honestly, that is another thing that I will say, if you study Chesley's story, it's very inspirational because one of the things that she wrote an article about is how as women get older, they become less desirable in age. And I think that's something that she discussed that she was not happy about, because it's like, okay, you have now this pressure to do everything before you're 30 or everything before you're 25 or whatever, because the more and more you get older, right, those lists 30 under 30 or 40 under 40, like by the time you're 50, like as a woman, it's almost like, what can you even give to society? Like, so even in that, I mean, so inspirational. Her story is really truly inspirational. But again, the way they portrayed it was like it just limited her to simply being a pageant person, a pageant queen, like
Right.
you know, and she was so much more than that.
I think it's also important that we talk about or address the language used when our stories are being reported to the world. I do kind of feel like when, there's stories, when our stories are portrayed within media outlets, I kind of feel like there's a specific language that they will use to reflect what they think is our stories or our interpretation of what happened. But in comparison to stories that favor the Caucasian side, there is no filter, there is no hidden agenda. Why do you guys kind of experience that within like some things you see as well?
Yes, definitely. We could go back to even in media where they was talking about that killing in South Carolina, and that white dude came in and he shot up the church. They didn't
Are you
say,
talking about Charleston?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just want to be clear. Okay, so the guy who went in the church
Yeah,
and
but
killed
they
everyone.
they said that he had mental problems and all that stuff. They
Well,
paint them as having mental issues, but if it's a black person do it, he's a thug.
but
He's
didn't
this, he's
they
that.
get him food once after?
Oh no, they arrested him and sat him down. He had a whole meal on the side of the street and all. They would have killed a black person for that. Even Rittenhouse, even Kyle Rittenhouse,
They,
they
they, they,
he
they give
said
a meal.
yeah, they gave him a meal. Kyle
Lord
Rittenhouse.
Jesus.
I don't know about Kyle Rittenhouse.
No, this is
Yeah,
I'm talking
we're
about
not.
different
Yeah,
topic. Kyle
yeah.
Rittenhouse said he did it in self-defense, got off. Kyle Rittenhouse has been invited to the White House. He's been on TV shows. People is old like.
Well, yeah, there were senators who were trying to
declaring him a
recruit
hero.
There were
saying-
senators who were trying to recruit him to be an intern for
yeah,
them.
declaring him a hero, saying he did it in self-defense. Like that's craziness. Like how someone taking another person's life is a hero. You went to this rally with a gun,
But see,
knowing what you wanted to do.
but that's a good point of order too. I think that with Kyle Rittenhouse, it's almost like the media manipulated. They took away the validity of what he actually did and kind of put him on a pedestal to elevate his own status. Like,
Exactly.
I think it's to me, if we're gonna put two people in the same room, one white person, one black person, we're gonna put their stories out into the world. It should be the same universal story for both sides. I feel like we see the black person or black people, our side of the story gets manipulated into a negative, whereas the white people's side of the story, it could be negative, it could be positive, it could be red, blue. It's gonna be pushed in a way that benefits them.
Right. And it does all the time. All the time. Because even if there is a black story that comes out, the first thing they try to do is look for the pictures. Like they'll go way back and find pictures of like them posing or some doing something. They're like, oh, they're a gangster. Like they gangbang, they do this. Mind you, that kid could probably not do that. It's just the fact that it's just what they wore, like that outfit of the day. And you see that all the time. They did that shit with Trayvon Martin. He had on a hoodie. The first thing they see, they portray him as a thug. They portray him as this and that. But he was just a kid that just went to go get Skittles in Arizona. Like
Did you guys
all the time?
Oh, sorry. Did you guys have the opportunity to watch the docu-series about Emmett Till's mother and her court case?
We watched some of it, not all of it. Yeah, not all.
So one thing that I found interesting about that is I never realized that there was a whole media campaign behind convincing, the jury that, Emmett Till did what he did and it was justifiable what the white people did to him.
Right.
It was interesting seeing how I believe it was the sheriff that, once, in the beginning of the case, he was on the side of Emmett Till's mother, but over the course of the case, he switched to basically support his fellow white colleagues, and it was almost like white people, white women. When you watch that case, you basically see, you can clearly see as day that these people did what they did, and that woman just basically said whatever she wanted to say just because she had the right to, and it's interesting to kind of see the foundations of how just this image and this thought process gets pushed out to different media outlets to the people, to where now I kind of feel like when you watch something or you engage in something, you don't realize the bias. You see the subtle biases in different things, and I've always been curious as to, why that continues to be the trend, especially when you have more people stepping up within the media. You have more black people owning networks, you have more black people managing social media, empires.
Well, you presented two things. So I want to touch on the TV stuff, but before I get to that, I do want to touch on the biases that you mentioned. I'm in the legal profession and I have the opportunity to kind of see some of the issues from the judiciary perspective. And a lot of judges are very well aware that within the court system, there's a lot of like implicit bias, period. There's no reason that a 16-year-old black boy, just because he's 6 foot, maybe a little more built, automatically you're thinking like when you see him that he's a grown man. Like he's still a child. That kid is still a high school student, right? Like, and that's a lot of reason why there was a lot of push for raise the age laws in New York, just so that people who are 16-year olds, they could be not treated as adults when they come into the system, because the implications that are involved when someone gets treated as an adult is going to be a lot more dangerous than being treated as a youthful offender. So there was a lot of push for that, but it's evident in the system. It's evident that there's a lot of biases. There was a case in particular in family court where there was someone, a family court, I want to say someone who worked in family court. She made a comment virtually with regard to one of the litigants who came into court, and she called that person by like the N-word, and she said it virtually. And it's like, yeah, like it, that. So there is a whole report made by an individual by the name of Secretary Jay Johnson, and he kind of like was like, these are all the things that's wrong with the court system, and this is what you guys need to do. Like, this is not, you guys need to fix this, because there's no reason why people who are black, brown, they're coming into your courtroom and they don't even feel comfortable, because like, what? And then this is the most vulnerable time of their lives, whether they're going into criminal court, family court, housing court, whatever. Like, this is the most vulnerable time of their lives. They're dealing with a crisis and they can't even feel comfortable in their own court. So it's evident that the biases are there. Quentin also alluded to it with the Trayvon case. Okay, a black guy has on a hoodie. Clearly, they're going to be treated a lot more differently than someone if they were to be of another race and have on a hoodie. It's just the biases that come with it and the perceptions, the judgments. Next point I wanted to touch on that you mentioned was the TV thing, because I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to watch Selling Tampa, which is on Netflix. And also on the OWN network, there's another show called Ladies Who List Atlanta. Both of those shows are about real estate, but they're black women, they're black brokerages, and they're black agents in the real estate profession who are selling real estate. And on both shows, both great shows, I think they're great shows, but I think Ladies Who List kind of, the whoever produced it really, they wanted to push the drama element rather than highlight the accomplishments of these black women. And you can tell they turned it into like a real petty show, like Real Housewives of Atlanta, like Love and Hip Hop. Like it became more about how these women have beef with each other, how they don't like each other. And it's like, why are you highlighting that? Of course people are not going to like each other. That doesn't mean business doesn't get done. But they're not highlighting that. They're not taking the opportunity to show, okay, 21 million homes were sold with this brokerage, and telling us, okay, what's the blueprint on how that was done? Like, you don't call Ladies Who List, but yet y'all not showing who's really listing. Y'all want to show all the drama aspects. Like, it's not cool.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have a vehement disdain. There's another show. You've heard Doctors the Medicine on Bravo.
Yeah,
I have a sincere disdain for this show, because I don't agree with the idea of black women who work their way to be doctors, surgeons, all these, fastidious careers that not a lot of black people back in the day were able to have. You're on national TV making a fool out of yourselves in a highly respected profession. And it's like, I've never seen, a all white centered show about, physicians. acting the way they act. And it's worse because there are also Black women doing this. And I feel like, you know, that right there is a bias that the media pushes out, that, you know, even though, you know, there's these women that are doctors and they're students and they're, you know, they've worked their way up, that they still fit within this mold of angry Black woman that is pushed out within the media, you know?
And I feel that you don't see white people doing that because white people don't take those roles. They don't
Mm-mm.
care for the money. Like most people sign up for these things because they need the money, or they want, they want more viewership. They want something out of it. White folk, they don't care for that stuff. So you'll never see them do something that like makes fun of their brand, that puts them on a platform that they have to now explain themselves of why they did it. So I feel like it's more of like they go into these communities and be like, oh, you need money? Sign on a dotted line.
My issue with like the Ladies Who List show particularly is like, okay, this is the OWN network, right? I wouldn't expect that from our own. Like,
it's not owned by Oprah. Just a sidebar. The OWN network is not owned by Oprah. It's owned by some white guy. Oprah is the face of the OWN network.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, but I know that Tyler Perry also has a lot of dealings with the
that's
OWN
how
network.
They get you.
But it's like, it's just that's the Oprah issue, because it's like, all right, you would think that if it's our own that we would not have that issue, or that even if let's say, for example, it's not owned particularly by Oprah, or she's not the primary stakeholder. Okay, this network is still meant to highlight Black people and highlight them, celebrate them. So why are you now creating these shows where it's like you're just dividing them? Like it doesn't look good. And it's not, when I look at it, I'm like, this isn't representative of me. Like, I don't look and feel like, okay, this is me. Like, I'm looking at it like, wow, like this is not good. I don't like it.
No, because it almost seems like our focal point in media is to kind of be the entertainment, you know?
Right.
It's like we have to provide entertainment, or, you know, push controversy, or, you know, push, you know, this agenda where it's like white people, they really have the full creative control as to what message they want to put in.
Right. But just to go back to the OWN network, the OWN network is owned is a partnership by Discovery Inc. and Harpo Productions. Discovery Inc. owns 95% of this network, and Harpo only owns 5%. Oprah owns 5% of the OWN network. It's owned by Discovery Inc., who is ran by a white guy named Robert Miron.
Gotcha.
You know, I was watching today on CBS Mornings. My mom, it's like a ritual of my mom. She watches all that stuff. They were talking about, have you heard of Byron Allen? I believe his name is Byron Allen.
I don't know who that is.
So he is a Black man. He is going to be the first he's going to be the first owner of an NFL team.
I was telling you this last week.
But he's a big media mogul. He has a entertainment brand that has like different channels. He owns the Weather Channel. He owns, they're like all like weird channels. But he was saying today about how he wanted to, you know, take on, you know, buy more things within his umbrella, because he wanted to take some of the things he talked about at his own talk show, that he basically had to fight to get a entertainment weekly talk show that was anchored by a Black man, focusing on Black stories, focusing on Black interests. Mm-hmm. So he was talking about how he wants to be a force in the TV industry, because he feels like that, you know, there's not many Black people that necessarily own the stories of what they're saying and who they're telling. And it was kind of talking about how the sale of Motown back in the day, where the guy sold Motown records and all the masters, all the artists, kind of broke his heart. So he was kind of basically articulating that he wanted to buy back, just to be able to have the power to, you know, articulate those Black stories the way they should be. And I think that's a layer too, where, you know, a large part of the media we don't necessarily own. So our narratives are also reflected upon how people perceive us to be.
That's true. Or we have a partnership and don't have majority stake. So now we don't have creative control. Someone else has creative control, but they make us the face. So whatever decisions they make, it feels like, oh, well, why would a black person do this to me? And it's not really that. It's the people that higher up that have more say. Because people think Oprah owns the own, like we said before, owns the own network, and she only has 5%. But because they made her the face, if anything goes wrong and she makes bad business deals and she's technically is putting herself to be outcasted by the black community, because all it takes is for you to have a couple bad deals against black folk, and then they all gonna be, like, oh yeah, we don't support this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing that it's not her, it's the higher up.
I mean, I think even Oprah shares part of the blame with this too. Now, when they first did OWN Network, OWN was kind of at least I call this, but it was more so wholesome content. It wasn't really something that was beyond the belt or went there. Nowadays I feel like it's actually going below the belt now a little bit. I feel like OWN is starting to become more urbanized as bigger as it gets. And I'm starting to see some of the content that was a bit more, how can I say this, more palatable to us in a way that showcase our more positive aspects. I feel like it's like the narrative always switches to showcasing those bad aspects of us or whatnot. So it's for me, it's kind of sad to see that there are people that are in the industry that own some outlets of media, but then they then go back to use them to perpetuate some of the things that make us look bad. Like take Mona Scott Young, for example. She penned and coined the successful Love and Hip Hop franchise, but it's a franchise made off of black people acting like an ass.
Yeah,
because that's what sells. People like drama. It's whatever you can get clicks on. That's what it is.
I mean, it's kind of conflicting. I like, even as I listen to all of what you're saying, it's a little bit conflicting, because the beauty about black people is that we don't fit into a monolith. Like, you're not going to see, okay, this black person acts like this black person. Like, we're not the same. And we all come from different walks of life. There are people who grew up in poverty. There's people who was blessed to grow up from a place of generational wealth and don't have to worry about poverty. Like, and are more educated or entrepreneurs, or went to school, didn't go to school, college dropout, whatever. Like, we fit all of those things. Drug addiction, no drug addiction, like. And so it's like, I've had conversations with even people like our peers who will say, like, I don't necessarily relate to them. That doesn't mean they don't respect me, but we don't relate to one another. Our stories are not the same. Like, there's certain things that they'll divulge in or choose to do that it does not reflect me. We don't reflect one another. So there are people who, when they watch Love and Hip Hop, or when they watch these shows, that is like their story that we see does reflect them. Like, there are people who they become strippers, for example, because they need to make a living. It's something that they choose to do. I'm not devaluing what they choose to do. That's why when I look at, for example, Love and Hip Hop, watch like Cardi B or someone's story like that on the platform, like, I never look at it and I'm like, well, I wouldn't do this. This is wrong. Like, that's not how I look at it. So it's kind of tough to even have this conversation, because it's like, these stories that we do see are stories of real people. There are people who do some of the things that we see, and it's really life for them. But it's like, is it fair to say that it's not, like, we're not represented properly because we don't necessarily agree with it, right? Like, there's somebody who might watch my story and find it boring.
Right.
Like, they might be like, well, this girl, she went to law school, she became a lawyer. Like, that's cool, but she didn't have to do what I had to do, or didn't choose to do what I was supposed to do. So it's like, it's tough, I think.
No, and I think you brought up an excellent point, because, I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. I just think that with black people, if you take everything that you just said, it's subjective to other people. Like, like it can't, like, with on the other side of the fence, with their stories and how they act, there is, it's just, that's just them. There is no, accountability. There's no discussion. This is just a straightforward image of Black people and the stuff that we put out within the media. It's, however we are, how you just said, I can look at your story and feel like it's not for me. It still then becomes subjective to the outside public if what I'm saying is making sense.
I get what you're saying, absolutely. Because I think for us, we get it. Culturally, we get it. We know that we're not a monolith, so we can watch something and appreciate it for what it is. Because I can watch a story about Jay-Z and know that he sold crack and then became this billionaire and respect it and love it and know that it's not me, or I don't necessarily feel like I had to make some of the choices that he made. But when you look at other groups that is not a part of this culture, they may look at it and be like, well, he's just a drug dealer who just became rich. I mean, but that takes away from his genius, his still takes away from his credibility, because everything that he learned by selling drugs, he was able to use that and implement that into the music game and become the mogul that he is now. But it's always, like you said, the story gets picked, like they pick and choose what they want to take from the story and they downplay it to where it's almost like it's dehumanizing for us. That's what it seems like. Like, oh, but you're not really that important, so let me just downplay you and pretty much spin the narrative.
No, they glorify the negative. That's all it is. Because like you said, with the whole Jay-Z thing, they're like, oh, well, he sold drugs. Okay, cool. Does he sell drugs now?
No, but they're always
stuck on the part that he just sold drugs to get to where he is.
Exactly.
So they don't even, everything else doesn't even matter to them. It's non-existent.
He didn't have a silver platter. He wasn't given, a gold plate. Right. So that part is like you can't get away from. You can't get away from the fact that this person grew up in poverty. This person didn't know any better. This person didn't. This is what they were taught.
No, it's not the fact that they didn't know any better. You put them in circumstances where they had to survive. And when you are put in circumstances where you have to survive, you're gonna do whatever it takes.
Meek said it best. He said it best in that interview. He was just kind of like, if you are like, if you're basically getting gunned down all the time, like you telling me you're not gonna carry a gun, like you literally don't have a choice. Like it's literally war zone outside of your house. Like you step out, you see people getting killed every single day. And the news reporter was like, you're right. I'd probably carry a gun too. Like
the moment that a Black person carries a gun, they are now a threat.
Not only a threat, you're looking at some time.
And it's just because of how society perceives that, how society perceives that look. And so no matter what situation it is, you being Black, you being caught in something that's wrong is going to be looked at in a different way than someone that may be white or Asian. And I just feel like it's a stereotype that it doesn't even come from us. And I feel like it's a stereotype that just continuously gets rolled out within the media.
And that's the other thing too. The media, the way the media is controlled to be a certain way, and that's just how it's been. And no one wants to break that mold. No one wants to break it, because if that was the case, it would have been broken. It's the fact that this thing is like a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar business, and whomever is at the top, which is like probably the same three people that control everything else, those people at the top control everything. So it's like, why change it? We making money, so it's not going to change.
And you hear a lot of times, even artists, right? This is why a lot of people choose to go independent in the music realm, because they want to portray a certain story. They want to portray a certain narrative, but the companies on the big end won't allow them that creative control to say, this is what we're going to allow you to do. And so they're like, well, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to go independent, even if that means I have to struggle, but you're not going to dictate the type of story or the type of music that I want to put out. And that's why sometimes people be like, oh, this person's music don't sound as good as when they like used to. That might not be they're in their control.
But wait, before you even say this person's music doesn't sound the way that it does, the only reason why people like music is because of the machine that's behind them. The machine pushes the music. So if you don't have a machine, it's more of a struggle for people to say, oh, to one, hear your music, to get it on any platform. It's hard. So that's why because like we had this conversation earlier, there's songs that you like that you think are amazing that never got to the radio.
Well, the radio is another problem in itself. Me and Quentin complain every single day. We hear the same songs every day at the same time. Like it's clockwork, and it's so annoying. And I mean, that's a problem in itself. There's so much more good music out in the world.
For you to be playing a song from last June.
But it's like the same songs. You just keep hearing them all the time, over and over. Like that's another example of the representation, because it's like we're not really represented, honestly. But the way this world it works is a joke, and like that is why I think it's so important in the homes to educate your family, to have these even conversations, because you can learn so much and see things aren't really what they seem to be. Because the way the media, if it was up to me and you, right, if we just listen to the radio, we would just think it was like only
Capella Gray
that and a few other artists that exist. We wouldn't know that there was other artists if like that was all we knew. What we heard on the radio, we would not know any other artists.
We would have thought it was Capella Gray, Drake, Future. I'm just trying to think of the stuff we hear all the time. Like those Lil Baby.
Yeah, that's
like you hear that stuff every day.
Limited.
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Like, and you hearing like album, like you're not even hearing like deep album cuts. You're hearing like the commercialized stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said,
and Nicki Minaj.
Well, now you hear her
because she just dropped
right.
The track.
But I'm saying like it's because they have that machine. It's songs that are amazing, that are better than these radio songs, and you will never hear them.
But I find with that too on the radio, it's like even with radio, there's this segmentation of Black representation. You see more variety in other artist songs, but when it comes to Black people's music, it's the same music tied to just those Black centric stations. I think that with Black representation, I feel like it's more controlled than other forms of other people's representation within the media. Like there's always a controlled narrative to how our projects get displayed to the public, to how our things get marketed, to how the people that portray us in the public. Like, and I feel like all these biases and all these perceptions, like for example, I was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with my niece on Friday. And the movie is a Black man. I'm like, oh, okay.
Guy first.
Film, one Black man. He's gonna die. He's gonna before everybody else dies.
Yep.
Sure enough, he died. But that became a stereotype, amongst us as Black people, because we've gotten so used to seeing the Black person, the strapping young Black man somehow die in a grisly way before everyone else. The final girl concept is basically based off of a white woman.
Right. But mind you, Justin, in reality, most Black folk are not making those type of decisions.
No.
They probably will be the last one to live. They will be the last one.
The funniest thing, I feel like the first time I felt connected as a Black person in a scary movie was when they did Candyman, and Tiana Paris's character goes into the laundromat. She opens the door and it's dark in there. She's like, nope, walks back out.
But you only get that because it's a Black director who has Black creative control. Like he has control over the whole thing.
Jordan Peele.
Yes.
I just wanted to give him his credit.
I'm sorry. Jordan Peele. Yes, he is a genius. Like he has that Black mind, and that's why you get those types of things. So it's and you see the difference. You see the difference between like a Chainsaw Massacre and a Jordan Peele movie. Like you see all of his actors are Black, and if they're not Black, they're white, and they end up dying. So it's like you see the difference. Like the only movie that I remember as a kid that was a thriller or something like that, and the Black person actually lived to the end was Deep Blue Sea, and LL Cool J was the chef.
Oh, that's a throwback.
The very first one that I remember that a Black person didn't die. That a Black person lived to the end. And even was it Samuel L. Jackson in that movie and he died?
No, he got clipped.
That might be a different one. But Deep Blue Sea, LL Cool J lived to the end. That's the one one that I remember as a kid. That's the only one I can remember as a kid.
Do we feel like things are getting better? Is there any progress in the way we're represented in the media?
I don't think so. I think it's just like, again, as I stated earlier, it's repetitive and the same type of patterns is just being perpetuated. There is a narrative that we're meant to fit in, and it's kind of like we just get pushed into those narratives, especially when it comes to um reality television. It's like, okay, there's always going to be that catty like gossipy beef type of like storyline that they're trying to push amongst the women, which makes it seem as though Black women can't get along, which is not true. um and it's so annoying because it's like I always want to take the color out of it, because it's like people don't get along. Like that's just and it's just a natural thing. It has nothing to do with color, but there's always this attribute that's painted with Black women being that, like, oh, she's gonna have an attitude, or she, the angry Black woman. So it's like, it's now when you put that story, that touch on it, it's like, okay, can this Black woman get along with these people? Or I just don't understand why we don't get the privilege of having a multi-dimensional, like have multi-dimensions to us. Like, yes, okay, maybe this Black woman might be a little bit more outspoken, but talk about how she still gets her business done. Talk about how she's still a good mother, a good wife. Like, let's talk about that. Y'all not highlighting that. And I that just is what infuriates me, because nobody's perfect and we all are human. Like, nobody's perfect. No, but you don't hear, like you said, with other groups, the scandals that people got going on, the fraud that they got going on, the embezzlement that they got going on.
Well, I would agree with that. You're hearing more of it now than ever.
I mean, okay, I'll give a prime example. I'll give another example. There was I don't know if it was like a meme or like if this was a genuine thing that went out, but there was a meme. It was Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart, and it literally had the caption, "Guess which one was a convicted felon?"
It's definitely.
And those who didn't know, like those who's not really in tune, they're gonna automatically
go to Snoop
Dogg, because Snoop Dogg, his background with being a Crip, being a rapper, you would think, okay, he's a convicted felon, but he was not in the show. And that's what's so funny about the show with Martha Stewart and Snoop.
Cooking?
Yeah, they're cooking show, because it's like,
because they make jokes with that shit all the time.
You put the two of them together, and it's like,
it's a recipe for success in white people's eyes.
He's an actual convicted felon.
Yep, and he's not.
Think about that. Even with just the imagery of it, people are gonna go to Snoop Dogg first because he's a Black man sitting next to a white woman.
And that's why I love whoever put that show together. I think it was such a good thing to do, because it forced people who are ignorant to see, okay, this is, maybe it makes you uncomfortable, but this can, like another prime example. God rest her soul, but I love her. My Capricorn sister, Betty White. She had a show back in the day, I think in the 50s, and there was a Black man, I don't know his name, but he used to come on and dance, and she loved the way he danced, so she would give him like more airtime. But the network was like, nah, that's not, no, like you should not be giving him more airtime. She was like, I don't care what you say, it's my show. Because he's talented, like he's really talented. And they ended up cutting her show. Like, they never renewed it because they wasn't really feeling what she was trying to do. But I think he's still living. And if I'm not mistaken, Steve Harvey interviewed him in recent years and was like, what did you think about that back when it was happening? And he was just like, much respect to her. Like, she didn't have to do that. She didn't. You're talking about a time where segregation and all that, the racial tensions is extremely high. And she was already above the curve. Like, she was already like on timing.
But see, it's people like that take that chance and risk. Like, a lot of Black folk don't have that don't have the opportunity to take those risks.
Right.
Like Betty White got her show canceled. She's still great. Like she still has other opportunities. Black folk don't normally have those opportunities.
Right.
Like when the door gets closed, that's it.
Yeah.
They don't have something else to fall back on. Because I guarantee you, after that show, she did Golden Girls.
I mean, I don't know her timeline, but
I'm saying, but Golden Girls is the thing that everybody knows her for.
Yeah.
So I'm saying she had something else to do. Someone else gets that same door closed as Clip. Let's look at Arsenio Hall, for example. They canceled his show. What happened to Arsenio Hall?
Same thing happened to Monique.
Nothing. You didn't hear about Arsenio Hall until they renewed his show years later. Decades later.
You're talking about stuff before my time.
I'm sorry.
I didn't watch that.
No, they renewed Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall was on TV in the
It came back for a couple years.
And then they canceled him again. So that's what I'm saying. People like that get the door closed. You don't hear about them anymore. They disappeared.
I mean, but he did come into America, no?
Yes.
So.
But that's only because Eddie Murphy put him onto that.
Yeah.
It's another black actor. Normally, if you're a black actor or artist, you get that door closed and you get blackballed. That's it. Like he said, Monique. You don't hear about Monique ever. She tried to do a Netflix series. They wanted to give her less money.
But
stuff like that.
I feel some type of way. I don't know. With that, I feel like our community has a role to play with that, because a lot of people turned their backs on Monique, and it was a few that did not, that really, held it down for her. But a lot of Black people turn their backs on Monique. So when you talk about representation in media, if you're going to say you're going to hold somebody down, hold them down when they low.
That's a fact.
Hold them down.
Monique.
Even with the back to closing the door, the Black Aunt Viv.
Well, yeah.
She got blackballed. You didn't hear about Black Aunt Viv until they did the reunion.
Yeah.
And she was on one episode. She was on like the first 30 minutes and you didn't see her again.
I think that's a very interesting point you brought up about the blackballing, because Monique actually, T.S. Madison has a show now. I don't know what channel it's on, but she had Monique as a guest. So Monique wanted to talk about how, you haven't seen me in certain things because I was actually blackballed after doing Precious, because Tyler Perry and Oprah wanted me to campaign for, the role, because we did the independent film and then I'm going to Sundays and it'll be a bigger thing. So you got to campaign for the role. And she's like, I did what was asked to do in my contract. I don't want to do this because you're not paying me to go around and make appearances, do all these things for the award. So she said that, Tyler Perry and Oprah basically blackballed her in the industry, basically found this image that she's difficult to work with. You don't give her any time. All the fact that she didn't want to campaign for the movie because she said, I did the character, I did the movie, I fulfilled my contract. If you want me to do more, you gotta pay me.
Right.
Precious was like what, 2010-ish?
I don't even remember.
Like it's years ago. But for the thing with the representation and that, it's like, on top of it being worse for us within the public eye, within the major media outlets, it's bad for us even within our own community. Like that's why, like, I agree with Burnett. I'm kind of 50-50 on my question, because even though we have the vehicles that we have now, we have Black-owned channels, Black-owned streaming platforms, we have shows with a Black-centered cast. I still feel like the next issue, that the most important issue we need to tackle, is the language that's used within these shows in the instances that are showcased within these. It's bad that I can watch a show with an all Black cast and still, after seeing it, say that, this doesn't reflect my experience as a Black man.
This is a tough conversation, because a lot of things that I mean y'all brought up that it's interesting. And I think in every realm, the problem is when you have people who are spearheading, they're at the top, that are not reflective of the stories and narratives that are being presented. It's always going to be some type of struggle that you're going to have. Because if, again, like Quentin was saying earlier, if the ultimate decisions that go out when it gets to the end, right? Because the main product that comes in at first It's not going to look like that at the end. But if the final product is being checked off by someone that's not reflective or does not look like the parties who are involved, that's going to always be an issue. You're not getting out of that. Because I'm even thinking in like the legal aspect. Like a lot of these, the people at the top, the people in the head, it's not diverse populations. So they cannot speak to the stories, the narratives of the communities that they are working with. They don't even understand. The experiences they never even had to deal with. Some of the problems that are facing the community they didn't have to think about. And yeah, you can try to understand, but it's very different thing when you have no ties or no affiliations or anything. You can still go home to where you go in your place of, wherever you live, in the suburbs, or
you don't even live in the city.
You live in a
condo, something,
whatever.
Townhome.
You live in a I'm basically saying you live in an environment that is completely opposite to what the people you're dealing with. It's gonna always present an issue. So that for me makes me think, okay, it makes me a bit discouraged when we talk about the portrayal, because so long as we have people who are at the top or who are controlling the narrative that are not reflective of us, it's going to always be an issue, which is why there has to be a push for, people to be involved, have a seat at the table, or for our people to create their own spaces that can be reflective of us and show us in the light that is accurate for us. And as far as like just within our community and like just with us and like the whole idea of being blackballed and stuff like that, we do have to have each other's backs. Like I find that a lot of times we see people in crisis and we don't hold each other up. Another prime example, yes, the great Wendy Williams, she's on a decline right now. We don't know if it's dementia. We don't know really what's going on with her, but it's like because of people's personal beefs with her, it's like no one wanted to lift her up in the time of need. And it's just, it's like the way even that's being portrayed in the media. And I'm so glad that her documentary was able to go out on Lifetime, because you really got a look into her story with her husband and her, having a child and what she had to go through to even be where she was at. But like, you never get that story in real life, because people always saying, oh, Wendy this, Wendy that. Like, and now Wendy's on the decline. Her show is essentially going to Sherry Shepherd now. And it's like, we don't hold each other up. We don't lift each other up.
But like you said, that it is a lot of things. That's why when and this is also controversial, the whole Kanye thing, when Kanye was always preaching about what's the word? Ownership. Like we need to own our own stuff. Like, he may be crazy, but that's actually a fact. We need to have ownership, and we don't have that. People are, like you said, having these. They're the face of these brands, but they have no ownership, no stake, no nothing. They don't make no decisions. That needs to happen. People need to have ownership.
But in his case, and that's what with Kanye, I really find it alarming, because Kanye has amassed enough wealth to where he can sort of take charge of his own, his own processes, his own material. Like, one thing that I can't stand her, but I like her for what she's doing is Taylor Swift is recording all her masters to all her records to basically own every aspect of her catalog. And Kanye, instead of trying to take charge of the things he's actually owned, I feel like with him, it's more of a media spectacle versus, him actively taking charge of his own career and his own materials and his own byproduct, in a sense. Like, I think people would be more inclined if it was all under one same message. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but but with that, I would say we don't know what Kanye's doing in the back behind the scenes. Like, we don't know. Like, it's a spectacle because that's something that he's actively, talking about. But we don't know what's going on behind the scenes as far as, him trying to put all of that under one umbrella. Like, we don't know, because Kanye doesn't. I mean, the only thing Kanye owns is what, Yeezus. He's trying to do this whole.
I don't know, but
land
he's a
thing.
billionaire.
Yeah, but he was broke. Remember, he was broke not too long ago, asking people for money.
But
he's a billionaire now.
Him, Jay-Z, Rihanna, they all reached the billionaire
absolutely
status. So I know that
their issues are not our issues. I understand that. But I'm saying we don't know like what's going on behind the scenes for him in ownership.
No, I don't. But I just said that just to like bring light to the fact that if he is a billionaire, then he has acquired a level of wealth. So I'm sure he has ownership, like
of something, not probably everything.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he don't own his masters still to this day.
Yeah, see that
he doesn't own his masters. Jay sold it back to Def Jam, if I'm not mistaken. I can be corrected, but he just recently said that Jay resold his masters. He don't own his masters. That's ownership.
I'm glad you brought up Def Jam too.
And people are going to, as long as, because you got to realize Kanye, the brand and the name sells. So why would I give you back something when I can still make money off of you? I don't care how rich you are. Like that's what people think. Like they'll be like, oh, if Kanye's name's attached to it, it's gonna sell out. Which is normally what happens. Kanye puts his name on something, even when it looks crazy, it sells out. Because that's just the pull he has.
But then I don't remember. Okay.
Sorry. Just prime example, Kanye said he's not dropping Donda 2. He dropping on that Steam player. You know that Steam player sold out? And he amassed, I think it's $2.something million just by saying he's putting it there alone. Like, that's the pull you have. So why would I sell you something? Why would I give you something back so you can have the ownership when I can make the money off you every time it plays somewhere, or every time it comes up, every time it goes out, anytime your name is attached and I have a stake in it, I get money too. I'm not gonna give it back to you.
The interesting thing about the music industry is that a lot of these artists are not. Their audience is actually not the Black community.
Oh, absolutely not.
They're not making money off of the Black community. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you have to take that with a grain of salt because in all retrospect, it's like, okay, again, like y'all said, these people, they're like faces, but they don't really speak to a lot of the Black people who are really doing this like day to day. Like everything you're saying sounds great, ownership, cool, but more often than not, even though a lot of people are working towards that, a lot of people are struggling with even trying to acquire their own whatever. Because when you look at the real day to day, like just life, whether you live in a high cost city like New York, Los Angeles, you don't got time for no ownership. You're just trying to survive. Like you're just trying to really like live, and you don't have that ability to be like, well, I'm gonna own stuff too, you know. So it's tough because it's like, it's there's a clear disconnect. There's a disconnect. I feel like.
I definitely agree. I definitely think that I feel like it's becoming a little bit. It's becoming larger. You know, it's like trying to bridge the gap of trying to keep our presence, the things that make us whole, the things that make us, the things that makes us artists, and also the things that's gonna make us money. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trading one for the other in a sense.
That's true, and that sucks to do when people are artists because when you first start something, you don't know nothing. So you have to like go a certain route or come out of pocket.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
It does.
It sucks a lot.
It's just tough.
I think with the wow. I'm looking at that today.
Nah, it's fine. Because it's a lot that we talked about. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. But I mean, you know, just to kind of like wrap up, I think that when you discuss a topic like representation, we're not really afforded the ability to even tell our stories or make our mark in the way that we necessarily want to, because we're not represented in the spaces or have the power or control to do so. And so even like us creating this platform, okay, like we did it, like we're on the front lines of it. So okay, this is our legacy. But I mean, even with something like this, people can always try to take from it and turn it into something that it's not.
But see, even with that, not to cut you off, with the this being ours, we're still on someone else's platform.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We're still somewhere else.
Exactly.
We don't own.
This lives on something else that does not belong to us, right?
We don't have that door. We just have.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's that's why this is such a. This topic goes so broad. It's not as like specific and narrow as you may think, because you are always going to be falling under someone else or something else that's going to limit what you can really do, unless you're afforded that privilege to be like, well, I have the resources to create my own or do my own, you know? So it's tough. And we can always aspire to like be presented well or be represented well, but when you have spaces like this, when you're not at the top, I feel like it's going to be really hard.
I definitely agree. I mean, you know, a lot of the problem is us not being in those positions to really articulate ourselves the way that we want to be represented and expressed to the community. You know, there's been a history of biases or just images that's been projected to the public, and it's like now trying to have to combat those things. Where, you know, what things can you really do if you're not in those positions? But I think the thing that we can do is just hold ourselves accountable to the images we want to put forth and really take spaces within those images and continue having these conversations like this. And really just do a better part in pitching those opportunities for us to be represented in a certain way.
Yeah,
that's true. And then when you get into those spaces, to be able to pull someone else up, and that's how it keeps going.
Yeah, you kind of said what I was going to say. I was like, we got to get our foot in the door. And once you get your foot in the door, like at least you're there. And as he was saying, you pull someone else in, because I think about all these people who, for example, let's say you become president or you become mayor, you get to choose your cabinet, you get to choose your advisor. So I might pick someone that is not who you thought I was going to pick, but they're going to advise me because I feel comfortable with them advising me on that particular topic. And that's how you kind of keep that thing going. You know, you stay true to you. And it's always better to have, you gotta have people you know, don't necessarily know. But I just feel like it's good to be well-rounded. Like stay true, stay grounded, so that whatever you create is representative of everyone and not just like stuck on, okay, this particular group. And that might rattle some people's feathers and shake things up, but like, so what?
I think that's a great note to leave our viewers with. Are there any final thoughts on representation, guys? Anything else that comes to mind?
No, not for me.
I mean, I just would say personally, I think I'm always going to just make sure that I can, if I get through a door, I'm always going to try to like carry someone with me. Always. That's the only way we can keep it going. You don't want to get somewhere and it's like, all right, like I'm here now, because we don't live forever. So you got to keep it going. You always got to pay it forward to someone else. So.
And I think also it's just being authentic in who you are. I mean, if we're authentic, people don't have a choice but to respect and retell the authentic version of ourselves that they get from us. So be authentic in things that you do. Be purposeful. Be mindful, and keep it pushing.
Yeah, like y'all said, just be apologetically you.
Always
be unapologetically you, and then like you said, open the door for someone else, and then keep it going.
Yeah.
All right, guys. This has been your lovely host with a brand new episode. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Later.